Appeared. Mr. Speaker, I beg to second. And Mr. Speaker, as I second, I want to urge this House. And I can see in front of me great men and women, behind me great men and women, that this is a patriotic duty. It has nothing to do with your brother. It has nothing to do with your party. It has everything to do with the people of Kenya and what we are going through. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, in a committee of the whole, as you directed, chaired by the distinguished Senator from Nyeri, it turned out that two ministers who you had directed to be summoned, but instead they were invited, did not show up in the committees. Mr. Speaker, if the Hansard was to be circulated, I think the speech of the day in the House Committee of the Whole was from the Attorney General Emeritus, Amos Wako, who spoke his heart out on these issues. And Mr. Speaker, members of committees in this House know that when a minister is unable to come to a committee on invitation or summons, the very least they do is normally send their peers or any other senior officer to come and tender an apology and explanation to the committee. We all understand that sometimes you may not be available for this or that reason. But, Mr. Speaker, in yesterday's meeting, and my good friend the chair is here, there was not a single representation from any of these two ministries. Not even a press officer from the minister's office to just come and tell us that we are sorry, we are not available today. Nothing. And I did say, Mr. Speaker, in a crisis moment as this, the Minister for Petroleum, wherever he was, would have cut short his speech, his trip, and come back to the country to address this issue. Nothing has happened, Mr. Speaker. And as we speak here, I join Senator Orengo in also opining that I don't think we have received any explanation, even from the proceedings of yesterday that were aired live, from any of these ministries about what happened. Mr. Speaker, I heard the Minister for Energy saying that what he was invited for does not concern him. Mr. Speaker, that is an assault on the dignity and authority of the chair of this House. On the day when we canvass this matter, Mr. Speaker, and the Hansard is here to bear you out as our Speaker, the distinguished senator from Kisumu, Rose Nyamunga, stood up and said, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, "Yesterday, I was shocked when I got a bill of 53,000 in electricity consumption, yet I've been paying around 18,000 or 19,000. Anytime you complain, they come to read your meter, then they tell you that is what they found on the meter. What is going on in this country? It should not continue like this. Something should be done. There is a big problem in that ministry. We know what the problem is, but we are not solving it." Then she went on, Mr. Speaker. Then at the end of the conversation and submissions on the floor, I requested you, Mr. Speaker, that following what Senator Nyamunga had said, and the country is bleeding and hurting because of high electricity bills are now fuel, kindly order the invitation of the two twin ministers to come before the House. And you did order. And, Mr. Speaker, to vindicate the office of the clerk, we were told that the letters of invitation carried the Hansard of the day, so that each minister would know what they were coming to be questioned about. So Minister Keter cannot and should not and cannot be allowed to say that what was on the floor of the House and before the committee does not concern him, because it squarely concerns him. In any case, Mr. Speaker, the article in the Constitution that Senator Orengo has quoted repeatedly, Article 153, when the House and its committees summon a minister, it doesn't matter on what matter. It doesn't. All the House needs to do is invite or summon a minister, and they are duty-bound to even miss cabinet and come to the House of Parliament to answer to the representatives of the people of Kenya. And Mr. Speaker, every minister, when they take oath of office, they say, and I quote in Kiswahili, nitahifadhi, nitailinda, na nitaitetea katiba ya nchi yetu ya Kenya. By doing so, you are adhering studiously to every single provision in the Constitution, including but not limited to being required to go to Parliament to answer questions, because that is what government must do. That is what the responsibility of government is. But to date, Mr. Speaker, we have no answers. We have no responses. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, this House must stand up in unison. Our censure may not lead to these ministers leaving office, but it's a blot on their character. It's a blot on their career. That indeed, they were given responsibility, and it becomes a matter of future reference on them that they snubbed Parliament, they abdicated responsibility, they were unresponsive to the plight of Kenyans, and they were uncaring in the discharge of our duties and responsibilities. That is what it is, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in comparable jurisdictions, Mr. Speaker, in Northern Ireland, the Attorney General of Northern Ireland, who was then a counterpart of Amos Wako, the police were looking for a suspect of IRA, and they found him hiding in the servants' quarters of the Attorney General. It was proven that the Attorney General didn't even know that that fellow was in his quarters. He promptly resigned and went home, Mr. Speaker. In Tanzania, during the time of President Magufuli, a friend of mine who was a minister failed to go to Parliament to answer questions. Magufuli promptly dismissed him. And he left cabinet. Mr. Speaker, this has happened in many places. There was a minister in the UK, Mr. Speaker, and it has been doing rounds even on social media, who arrived late in Parliament to answer a question, and the Speaker censured him. He promptly resigned and left cabinet. He didn't fail to arrive, he arrived late. These ones don't even arrive, don't even explain, don't say anything. They are now, Mr. Speaker, behaving and talking the language of Simon Art Garfunkel and Paul Simon of the sound of silence. And we want to tell them that the sound of silence is louder than spoken words. We need, Mr. Speaker, the President to tell his ministers that they have a duty to him as they have a duty to Parliament, because it's the House of Representatives. Anything that is touching and affecting the people, Mr. Speaker, must be dealt with in this House. Over the weekend, Madam Speaker, I was in Busia County, represented by distinguished Amos Wako. Mr. Speaker, there was a queue of vehicles of Kenyans crossing to Uganda to buy fuel. Fuel to Uganda, to Rwanda, to Burundi, to Eastern Congo is imported through Mombasa, passes through Kenya. How come fuel in Goma, Boni and Butembo in Congo is cheaper than fuel in Kenya? Mr. Speaker, it doesn't make any economic sense. And Mr. Speaker, now it's time that this House must relook at a bill that was drafted by leadership of Senator Murkomen that was brought to this House to amend the Constitution, to give authority to this House, Mr. Speaker, as a house of reference on all bills coming from the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, the Supreme Court, in the advisory, told the country and this House that the judges did not envisage any situation under the sun where any legislation did not concern counties. That whether you are talking of police, the theater of security is in the county. Whether you are talking of taxation, the affected people are in the counties. We must, Mr. Speaker, as we move to the future, demystify the definition of the so-called money bills in Article 114. So that, especially taxation, Mr. Speaker, when you go to the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, and members themselves tell us that when a bill comes to the House, they're allowed to speak for a maximum of 2 minutes each. What can you speak on taxation, Madam Speaker, for 2 minutes? And you turn progressively a House of Parliament into a voting machine. In fact, it becomes now an extension of the executive. People sit in the Treasury. They don't interact with ordinary people. They don't know how ordinary people are hurting. They simply think that tax the Kenyan as much as you can to solve your problems. Madam Speaker, I don't believe the explanation being channeled out, and I listened to the proceedings in the National Assembly. Unfortunately, many members of the National Assembly were behaving like apologists of the Treasury. Mr. Speaker, I heard one member saying that this extremely high, punitive and oppressive taxation is because of our debts. Mr. Speaker, Mutula Kilonzo and I sit in the committee, Madam Speaker, of Finance. We were chaired by the distinguished Senator for Mandera. The Minister for Finance appeared before us and said he is raising the debt ceiling so that he can opt to take concessional borrowing and retire expensive debts. To date, Madam Speaker, there is not a single expensive debt that has been retired. And the borrowing has hit the ceiling. In fact, Madam Speaker, I will not be surprised if a new motion was brought to this House to expand the debt ceiling. And when that is done, we must ask the Finance Minister, which expensive debts did you retire? To date, Madam Speaker, as we grumble with this, one sovereign alone called China is owed 1 trillion Kenya shillings by Kenya. It is even a threat to our national security. Because if China decides to turn on Kenya and take us to the Paris Club and do all manner of things that creditors do to borrow us, we will be a very sorry state, Madam Speaker. And I want to urge this House, Madam Speaker, and when I see everybody today, it means we are all committed. I hope we have not come here to defend sectarian interests. We must speak as a House. There's no sectarian interest to defend here. 80% of Kenyans, Madam Speaker, rely on kerosene for lighting, for cooking. 100% of our economy relies on fuel, Madam Speaker. I cannot remember any time in the recent past when fuel prices went up to the extent that we saw recently. Kerosene alone went up by 12 shillings. Petrol, Madam Speaker, and as we are doing this, the price of crude worldwide is coming down. There is a girl in a lady in one of the TV stations called Okwara. I saw her analyzing the price increases on TV, and she said the culprit is one, taxation. Who taxes Kenyans, Madam Speaker? It is not the executive. It is Parliament. We can't blame President UHURU for levying taxes on Kenyans. He brings proposals. It's Parliament that taxes Kenyans. And the Parliament that is taxing Kenyans are the same ones standing up to apologize for taxing Kenyans. I even see some of them standing in funerals and decrying the high cost of fuel when they know it is them who have imposed on every liter of fuel we are paying taxes of up to 72 shillings. That is why, as Orengo read to you, landlocked countries that have nothing, how do you expect countries like Swaziland, a little island in the middle of South Africa with nothing, having fuel cheaper than Kenya, with all the bounty we have? How do you expect fuel moving from Mombasa for 2,000 kilometers to Butembo in Congo, and it is cheaper there than here? And then, Madam Speaker, to add insult to injury, to take salt and rub in a sore wound, we summoned the minister responsible to come and explain to the House of the representatives of the people of Kenya, and the minister doesn't show up, gives no explanation, doesn't care. That is what we are facing, Madam Speaker. Today, Madam Speaker, I would want to urge the chairman of the Energy Committee that you don't even need a resolution of this House. You live in Kenya, my brother. What is going on in KPLC, a monopoly with an unprecedented authority over the people of Kenya, is bankrupt. How can a monopoly of an essential service be bankrupt? How can you explain that, Madam Speaker? That KPLC, over whom we depend for our electricity, and when you don't pay your bill, they come and disconnect you from the pole and go away. Some of us, Madam Speaker, have suffered at the hands of KPLC. My own residence, where I've been paying bills of 23,000, 24,000, last month they gave me a bill of 88,000. As if I ran a factory. And it is true of everybody else. It is true of everybody else. Madam Speaker, big factories like Bamburi have now switched from KPLC to solar. And by doing so, they are denying them revenue. By denying them revenue, Kenyans are going to lose jobs. High and considerate. And instead of the Minister for Energy coming to answer those questions here, he's busy with workers of KPLC averting a strike. That strike will avert itself if KPLC was working. You will not need any minister to go and talk with workers of KPLC. KPLC has management, has a board of directors. You don't need a minister to go there to stop a strike. In any case, if he was in competition between going to stop a strike and coming to Parliament, which takes precedent? Madam Speaker, the answer is obvious. He must come before this House. I know that the chairman ordered that summons be issued, but those summons being issued to the two ministers does not purge their contempt of Parliament. They remain in contempt. And Madam Speaker, I want to urge as I finish, so that others can also speak, that the chair should be obligated to deliver the proceedings of this motion today to the executive, so that they can see the outrage of the representatives of the people of Kenya in the conduct of our ministers. And what is shocking, Madam Speaker, is the two ministers are our former colleagues in this House. One was sitting where Linturi is sitting, another one was sitting where Musuruve sits. Always. They are not strangers to Parliament. They have served with us in the National Assembly. They have served with us in this House. They would be the last persons expected to defy an invitation or a summons to this House. More so on a matter that has captured the outrage of the nation. Everywhere, people are talking about their inability to live. Because, Madam Speaker, you touch fuel, you have hit public transport, you have hit manufacturing, you have hit lighting, you have hit virtually everything. Even this piece of paper will now cost more because of the escalating prices of fuel. The management of security services will be compromised because budgets have already been set. They may not have even money to fuel cars to run to Laikipia and stop what is going on there. That is what we are facing, Madam Speaker. Therefore, I urge the House, Madam Speaker, to find that the two offending ministers stand censured, and the censure has the effect of having a blot on their CV, on their character, on their career, and on their future. Madam Speaker, because this country must be run by responsive people, men and women, who will deny themselves for the greater good of society. But when a minister takes a plane to go out of the country when his docket is on fire, that cannot be condoned by any reasonable member of this House. Madam Speaker, I beg to second this motion, and I urge members, once again, like Senator Orengo said, this is not about party, this is not about my community, this is not about my people, this is not about where we come from. This is about the people you represent in this House. The poor mama in the village. And it's high time, Madam Speaker, that even the Committee of Finance, chaired by the Senator for Kirinyaga, carried out a public inquiry on taxation in this country. We are talking of taxation here in Nairobi at the national level. We had a case from Mombasa where Senator Faki comes from, where the governor levied taxes on a lorry carrying soda, the crate of soda, the bottle of soda, and the content of the bottle of soda. 4 different taxes on one product. How can you do that, Madam Speaker? And Kenyans have been so obedient to authority. We just sit, complain at funerals that life is too harsh, things are not adding up. From there, everybody puts their hands in the pocket and walk home. Representatives of the people, speak today, let the country